Hello everyone, in this video I want to talk about the difference between something called xylem and phloem. It's a question I often get asked by students when studying photosynthesis, and you only really hear about these two initially at Key Stage 4 leading into 5. Does it tend to come up in Key Stage 3? Now, over to the right, I've drawn a very crude diagram of a leaf. And if we look at the leaf, we can see these black lines that I've drawn here. These are what are called veins in the leaf, and these veins are actually the xylem and phloem. Like if you look at your wrist and you see the veins carrying blood in your body, the leaf has this sort of similar network of vessels designed to transport substances. And that network is made up of xylem and phloem. So plants have two transport systems, two separate vessels, the xylem and the phloem. Now the xylem is what we'll talk about first. Xylem vessels are designed to carry water. They look a bit like this. So I'm just going to draw a very mini sketch of the xylem. So what we find if we have a look, I'm trying to just draw a bit of a hexagonal opening here, perhaps not the best diagram. And we're imagining that it's a sort of cut end, so I've almost opened it up so we can see inside. And what you have here, so these little dots represent water. It looks a little bit like this. Now basically, xylem, as we said, are vessels to transport water. They're made of dead cells, so we're going to make a few little notes here about the difference between the two. So xylem are actually made of dead cells. So this is what we're talking about the first, xylem. They're made of dead cells, and they're joined end to end with no end walls between them, and just a hole or a lumen down the middle. So there are no end walls between those dead cells. Just a lumen, just one long sort of hollow tube forming. Now the sides, not shown particularly well on this picture, but the sides, so these parts here that I've tried to draw, they are very, very thick. In fact, they are made of thickened cellulose, and they're strong and stiff, and they're designed to give the plant support ultimately. And as I said, their job is to carry water and minerals from the root that's entered through the root hair cell essentially, up to the shoot, to the leaves, to become what is essentially known as the transpiration stream, the subsequent movement of water through the plant and its evaporation from the leaf. So that's a little bit about xylem. Dead cells forming one long narrow tube with no end walls, thickened cellulose sides designed to carry water and minerals. Let's contrast them with phloem. So we're just going to draw what phloem looks like. Again, very rough sketch. Not the best by any means, but I'm going to have a shot at it. I'm hoping that you might be able to see that straight away the inside looks a little bit different in a phloem compared to a xylem. And we're just going to put few little kind of dots here. So I'll just draw it and then I'll explain exactly what it is I'm drawing. Okay, so what we have here is a phloem tube. Now, phloem, even though I know it's spelled a little weird, the way I like to think of it is phloem, food, the same sound, even though it's spelled clearly with a P. Phloem is for food, ultimately. Phloem tubes transport food or sugars that the plant has made in photosynthesis. It's made of columns of living cells. So that's really important to note. It's made of columns of living cells. So completely contrasting to xylem. And they allow the transport of foods, mainly sugars, both up and down the stem to growing and storage tissues. And this movement of food synthesis around the plant is known as translocation. So it's involved in the transport of food, but mainly sugars, up and down the plant in what's called translocation. So when we think xylem and water, we think transpiration. When we think phloem and food, we think translocation. Now structurally, that is the key difference between the xylem and the phloem. Now in a leaf, if you were to look at it cross section, you find that they actually run side by side with one another. And they're referred to collectively as the vascular bundle. Vascular means almost like veins, because they are almost like a vein network, transporting substances around this organism. So where they're found in each type of plant structure is actually related to the xylem's other function, support, because I've talked about its primary job is to transport water, but it is key in supporting the plant. So you can see from different cross sections, you can actually identify which one is the xylem because of its function. So we're just going to end by referring to 3 cross sections. So again, I'll reduce the size of this for a moment. Now, if you were to take a root cross section, so cross section through the root, it might look a little bit like this. So I'll just draw this. So it's not the best drawing, but hopefully once I've drawn all 3 diagrams, you'll be able to appreciate the point that I'm making. So this here, we'll just draw this one first. This is a cross section of a root. Now roots have to resist crushing as they push through the soil. So the xylem are actually in the centre to give it strength. So what I've drawn here in black, here we have the xylem, so you can identify them by spotting them in the middle. The red bit in the around that, around the outside, represents our phloem vessels. So these two collectively make our vascular bundle. And these long green extensions that I've drawn, they are the root hairs. So that's one. If we were to take a cross section of the stem itself, it might look a little bit like this. So we've got outside of the stem here, again very, very rough sketch. I'm hoping you might be able to see what's going on here. So if we look at the stem in cross-section, you see the two vessels running side by side, and in red once again we have phloem, and in the centre we find our xylem. Now, stems need to resist bending, clearly. So the xylem not only forms sort of structural support, it almost provides a type of scaffolding for that stem. So the phloem, as we've seen so far, is always on the outside. And finally, if we were to draw, just read this down one more. If we actually took the leaf, if we actually draw the leaf in cross-section, and I won't draw all of the details here, I'll just draw the one in the centre. What you'd see, and I'll draw maybe just a few others on the side. What you'd see is that the phloem are on the bottom, and the xylem appears to run above that at the top. So we've got the red part as the phloem again, and the uncoloured, the unshaded part in as the xylem. Now, in a leaf, xylem and phloem actually work together to make up this network of veins, and they're both needed for support. So it's just really to note the difference in position between the two. But really the key thing to remember is that xylem, to provide structural support, are often found in the middle, in the centre. Okay, I hope all that helps.